Today we're going to start with collecting materials from magazines. You can really use any kind of magazine. I know sometimes students feel like they get stuck with magazines that they don't really like or can't find cool stuff in. But the reality is like what really makes your collage materials is how you think about what you're looking at. So for me, a lot of times I'm looking for texture or color. Here in this example, you kind of have to look past kind of what is it showing me and what can I use for my composition. So for me, I actually like this kind of off-white color. And there's two different ways to approach when you're gathering your materials. I do a lot of tearing and then trimming. So it's kind of up to you in terms of how you want to think about it. For me, I like this kind of plain color. You'll need to have a good pair of scissors for your assignment. And then also these small details I think are really quite nice too. Keep in mind that magazine paper tears pretty easily, so you want to be careful kind of cutting it and trimming it. I've definitely had issues where I've torn a whole piece that I was interested in. So scissors, having a good pair of scissors is really important. The other thing that you might be doing later on is going to be using your X-Acto blade, which we'll talk about in a little bit. For me, I look at what I'm interested in regards to color, and I think that these are incredibly beautiful photographs. I'm particularly interested in this one. So one thing that I'm thinking about doing for this one is I'm going to check and see what's on the other side. I do really like what's on the other side, but I think this figure will suit what we're doing a little bit better. So this figure could work really nicely in a couple of different ways, and we'll play with this in just a little bit. You'll notice on the back I still have a little bit of a strip of some of that botanical matter, and I really want to keep that because I'm really interested in it. So I'm going to go ahead and clear that out as well. So the things that you should be looking for are things that you can use for a background and things that you can also use in the foreground. So we'll keep kind of going. The other thing that I look for are kind of swatches of color. In this example, I really enjoy this corner right here, and then I also really enjoy this pink right there. So for me, when I see kind of an area that I want to pull, and it's kind of in the middle, I will use my X-Acto blade. You always want to cut, in a way where you're aware of what your non-dominant hand is doing. So you'll notice I'm being very careful with my left hand in this case. And this is just an approximate element that I'm going to be working with. You'll notice here I just really like that pink. And then if I put the pink on top of this, you've got some things that are starting to pop. The other thing that I also really love about this page is I love this texture in her dress. I'm going to go ahead and cut a section of that out. As you're gathering your materials, you really want to be thinking about like, what am I interested in visually? What do I get excited about? I also really like this corner up here. This corner up here will be easier to cut with a pair of scissors. And then we'll go back in later with our X-Acto blade and scissors and talk about some different ways that we can kind of make more precise cuts as we're working. You'll notice here, this is the issue with using X-Acto blades. Does everyone see how this kind of went through on the next page? Which in some ways, this is actually pretty cool. So sometimes I like what the other side of something looks like. Oh, look at that texture right there. So you have to be careful when you're cutting through magazines. You don't want to go so lightly that you don't actually make the cut, but you also don't want to cut too much so that you kind of start going through things. Textures, color, it might be fonts or words that you want to grab or that you want to work with. I would avoid right now cutting out specific figures, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later in another video. I'm always trying to find kind of neutral things that I can kind of play with or I can kind of pull. This dress is really amazing and the figure is really amazing. Definitely have to grab that. So for me, I just have stacks and stacks and stacks of things that I can work with from magazines. You'll notice here I've already got a good stack going and I'm pretty excited to start working with the collage. The next thing that we're going to be talking about in the next video is gathering other types of materials. So I'm going to keep this together. I have students that really enjoy like using different ways to kind of organize their materials. You can use Ziplocs, you can use folded paper, any way that you feel like will keep you organized as you're working.